In lecture number 2, we have seen some concepts which I just try to repeat quickly. We try to understand some of the points here, like hierarchical structure in operating system, which represent that the operating system is properly designed with some kind of a hierarchy. So what do we mean by hierarchy is, so we have divided the programs into specific categories. Like if you understand this approach, we have seen that there are various layers. Okay, so where each layer is having different functionality, and the top level layer is the user interface. With the help of this layer, the user is going to interact with the computer. Okay, like we see our desktop or any interface, the user is going to interact with the system with the help of this layer. And when we go to the bottom level layer, level 0 or hardware. But what is the main point to note here? We bring some kind of modularity here. What is modularity? We break the operating system into various layers, or the computer system software into various layers. The top level layer can only communicate with the layer next to that, and this layer can communicate with the layer next to that, so that to bring some kind of a control in the system. And here actually we will be having our operating system or the kernel, which is going to interact with the hardware. So this concept has been explained with different kind of structures. We understand what do we mean by kernel. I told you kernel is like a manager. Kernel is like a boss. So who is working in the background in the system, and we call it as a component of the system, which is very important to work. If the kernel is working, like I told you to remember, kernel is like a dean of the college, like important component or the part of the system. So everything happens with the knowledge of the kernel. I gave you many examples on that day to understand about the concept of kernel. Okay, we understand the structure of the system, how it has been started. You can watch my video again to understand that. So different kind of structures we discussed. System call, with the help of system call, they are like system programs. With the help of system calls, the user program can communicate with the hardware. They are normally written in the same language of the operating system, and normally operating system like Windows are created with the help of C or C++ programming language. That's why the system calls are also written with the help of C or C++ language. So they are like libraries. With the help of these libraries, we can use the system calls. Like I gave you the example, if we want to print something onto the screen, or if you want to read something from the memory, or if you want to store some file onto the hard disk, if you want to get some input from the keyboard. So we need to use the system calls, because we we are just application programmers. Our job is to write normal programming. But if you want to use the system call, we need to bring some libraries into our program. If you remember my example, I told you that we use import statements in Java. So import the libraries. Why do we need to import the libraries? Because to use the system functionality in our Java programs or any other programming language. So that's what we have understand. We call it as APIs. API means, I told you that it is application programmers interface. With the help of this, we are going to get into the system functionality so that we can use the system calls. So what are the examples of the system calls? We have seen system calls for creating the process, the system calls for working with the files, the system calls for the devices, the system calls for the managing the housekeeping information like date and time, properties, read only kind of thing, communication. Where if you understand this, these are the core functionality operating system. How to handle the process, file manipulation, device handling, housekeeping, communication. So to use this kind of system calls, we need to have APIs in our programming language. So that is where the system calls are important, because without system call, we cannot do the system programming. Like we remember in the previous class, we revised that there are two types of programs: system program, application program. We write normally application programming, but in the background we need some system programming which will operate onto computer hardware. If you look at this process creation, why do we need a system call for creating a process? Because process means we are opening a program. Where is this program? this program is in hard disk. We need to bring the program. I will explain later on how the program works. Okay, I'm just giving an idea. Okay, the program will be loaded into the hard disk. The program should be bring onto the memory, and from the memory, the CPU is going to access that, which means whenever we work with the process, creation of a process, termination of a process, suspend means close the process, resume means restart the process again, abort means we stop the process in the middle. Whenever we work with any process, we need to use the hardware. That's why we need the system call. Same thing applies to the file. Where is our file? Our file is in the hard disk, or maybe we store in the network, or maybe we store in the flash drive or memory card. So to work with the file, we need to open it, we need to close it, we need to read the memory, we need to store the data into the memory, the CPU access the memory. Again, here hardware is involved. So if you look at all these options, we need to use the hardware. So how can we activate, or how can we work with the hardware? With the help of the system calls. That's where system call is the user interface or the programmer interface to the system. Without system calls, we can do nothing in the computer. We cannot write anything. Imagine we write a Java program without reading from the keyboard, without writing onto the screen, without reading a file. Not possible. We need to use the hardware. So directly we cannot do. That's why we need to take the help of libraries. Okay, so there are many libraries depending upon programming language. Okay, so we understand about the system calls. Then we started the concept of process. I told you that in our computer there are number of programs, but the programs which are now in execution, so we call them as process. Okay, and we discussed process control block stores the information about each process. I gave you the example on that day that we store. I gave the example also. You can check that back. I cannot repeat everything. So I'm just giving a quick review of the previous lecture. So with the help of the process control block, we can store the code of the program. We can store the data of the program. Data, I told you, so they are the global variables used by the program. Process tag stores the local variables of the program. Please do refer back my lecture. I this concept with the help of an example. So program counter is a pointer which shows which line of the instruction it is executing. So if you take a program, a Java program or a C++ program, so this is our program, for example. So the program counter is like a pointer which shows, okay, now this line is executing. So it has to remember that this line is executing. Why? Because suppose if I stop the program here, I want to restart it, it will not go back to the beginning of the program. It will start from the same instruction and it will go to the next instruction. For that reason, the system remembers, or I mean system indicates operating system remembers which line or which instruction is being executed with the help of program counter. So what is the program counter? It is a pointer to some place in the program code. Why do we need to have this program counter? To remember, like, why do we have these page numbers or the slide numbers here in the lecture? Because last time I stopped with a particular slide number. Okay, so I should remember that I completed slide number 23 or 24. So that next time when I start the class, I should not go back to the beginning of the class and start from there. I should remember it. So for that reason, we have the slide number, or in our Word document, we have the page number. In the same way, in the program also, there will be program counter to remember what it was executing, so that when we stop the program here, to start from the next instruction. That is the job of the program counter. And CPU registers, we understand it's a memory units on the CPU to store variable information or little amount of information. And memory management information, how much memory this process wants, how much memory it is accessing, how much of memory it needs in the future. So this point we will explain more in our lecture number 7 and 8 when we talk about memory management. So we are going to completely discuss about how operating system manages the memory. So we are going to discuss in detail in our lecture number 7 and 8. Okay, accounting information to show who is the owner of the process and how long this process is running, how much CPU time. So all these things, we call it as a process control block, which we have seen in the previous slide, PCB. So what is PCB? Process control block. What it does, it stores the information associated with each process. What information? This information: code section, data section, process tag, program counter, CPU register, memory management information, accounting information. So because the system should know all the details to execute the process. And we understand the states of the process. I told with the help of the hospital example, when the new patient comes, we call it as a new patient, register in the hospital. Now, when they are waiting in the queue, they are the ready patient, go to the doctor. Now, CPU, here actually, who runs the process? CPU run the process, which means in our example, it's a doctor. The patient is going to the doctor. By some reason, the patient may complete the job. Okay, exit, finish. The job of the patient is done. Exit, terminated, done. But for some reason, maybe we can go for lab examination, or maybe we can go to get the medication, or maybe we go to get to another doctor. So it is not completed. We can come back and wait. And once I go to the lab, for example, the patient went to the lab. Again, the patient will go to the doctor, queue, wait to go to the doctor directly. Sometimes we can go, but what is the good protocol? We cannot go directly to the doctor. We just go to the the ready queue or the nurse. Okay, say I finished my lab examination. I want to go to the doctor. Once the doctor becomes free, maybe some patient here means some process is running. We cannot go directly from here to there. You can see there is no link from here to there directly. Why? Because we know the experience of the doctor. So we can complete the lab examination or some other test. We cannot go directly to the doctor. Again, we have to go to the queue. Then if the doctor becomes free, we can go there. So that is actually the protocol. So that is where we have this states of the process. Process can be new process when the new process just came into the system. Now ready to go to the CPU. Like I hope you got the difference now between new and ready. New, imagine like a new patient in the hospital doing the registration. Okay, paying the money in the reception, paying the money. Okay, now I am a new patient. This is my card. This is the money. So that is like a new patient. Now what we do, we take a sticker here. And after that, we cannot go directly to the doctor. We have to go to the clinic. Then we are sitting. Again, there may be so many patients sitting here. So we have to sit in the queue. And once the doctor becomes free, the nurse will say, okay, now go to the doctor. Okay, but due to some reason, we can come back, or due to some reason, we can come for the lab examination or any other thing. Then again, we can go to the doctor. So running means we are with the doctor. Like the process is in the CPU. So after this, if we complete our job, that is exit. Now the process is terminated. Terminated means we completed our job. So that is where we have the process in different states. So this is what we have seen: new, running, waiting, ready, terminated. So what is new? The process is being created, like the new patient is created with a sticker. Running, instructions are being executed, like the patient is in the doctor's office. Waiting, the process is waiting for some event to happen. Waiting can be, there might be another patient waiting. There might be going to the lab waiting. There might be going to the x-ray waiting. Going for the medication waiting. Any reason. That's why they did not say waiting for why. They said waiting for some event. It can be anything in the system. Maybe the user is typing something. Maybe the user is printing something. Maybe the user is waiting for some input from other source. Due to some reason, the process is waiting. There is no one reason for waiting. Because of any reason, we can wait. Now, as I said, new is a new patient. Now ready. The process is waiting to get assigned to the processor. Like the patient is now waiting to go to the doctor. Remember that. The patient is now waiting to be assigned to a doctor. So this is ready to go. Once my job is done, this is terminated. So I hope with the help of the patient and the doctor example or the hospital example, we can easily remember this concept. Even in the later lectures, I will use the same example so that we can have the concept clear about understanding the process. Now we are moving on to a new concept, and this concept is actually foundation for our lecture number 4. That's why on that day I did not discuss about this. So process scheduling is nothing but when there are so many processes, how do we have to schedule them? Like for example, we have the timetable in the college. There are so many courses, so many teachers, so many students. So the registration department prepares a schedule so that we follow the schedule. You attend the class on time in a particular day, particular time. I teach on a particular day, particular time, different section. So you and me, we are following a schedule. In the same way, in the system, the operating system has to schedule the jobs that we'll understand in our lecture number 4. But first of all, we're just going to understand some basic. Okay, so what is the purpose of scheduling? Today we are going to see. So the purpose of scheduling is maximize the CPU use. Okay, so if you don't have schedule, it will be very confusing for the CPU to work, because imagine there are so many process waiting for the queue. Okay, so if there is no proper schedule, it will be very difficult for the CPU to handle the request. So for that reason, if you want to run the maximum number of process in the system, so we need to create a schedule. Another reason, quickly switch process onto CPU for time sharing. So when, like for I gave you the example of the doctor in the last week, when one patient is going for the, I will go back to this slide again. Okay, so when, for example, one patient went to the doctor, doctor said, okay, go to the lab examination. Now, until this patient complete the lab examination, what the doctor will be doing? The doctor will be looking for another patient. Okay, so it is happening because of the scheduling. There is a nurse sitting in the station. If there is no nurse, the doctor does not know that there is a new patient here waiting for the doctor to see. So the nurse or the receptionist or the nurse who is sitting here is like a scheduler of the operating system. What they do, they look into the queue. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 people waiting for the doctor. They send the first person to the doctor. If the patient is going out, finished, no problem in that. They will take the second patient, send to the doctor. If this patient is going to the lab examination, the doctor will not be waiting for him. The doctor will be taking another patient from the queue. So that is where, to effectively use the time of the doctor, we have this scheduling. Like we create a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might be having the experience. The nurse will be putting the sticker in a queue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then she will call the name. You are the next patient. Please wait. Go to the doctor. So likewise, the scheduler does the same job. So the reason for having the scheduling is quickly switch process onto the CPU for time sharing. So it will be keep on changing one process to another process. Okay, so what the process scheduler does, it selects amongst the available process for the next CPU, next execution on the CPU, like the nurse taking the patient and selecting the patient and sending the patient to the doctor according to the queue. In the same way, the process scheduler does the same job. To do that, we need to have some cues, because we cannot say, we cannot just call some patient from here, say go go. We cannot do that. We need to have a queue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We need to have a number, or we go to the police or we go to some hospital, they give us the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Imagine if there is no number, there is lot of confusion. So we don't know who is the patient who has to go next to the doctor. In the same way, it maintains some queue. What are the queues it maintains? It has a job queue, it has a ready queue, it has a device queue. Now we'll see about one by one. What is a job queue? So set of all process in the system. So imagine that all the patients in the hospital. So it's like set of all process in the system, all the patients in the hospital. So there is a queue. Now what is a ready queue? Set of all process residing in the main memory, ready and waiting to execute. Okay, so what happens here? I will just give a scenario. Like here, imagine this is a reception in the hospital. Now we know we have to be in a queue there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is the queue in the reception in the hospital system. Now what happens here? Some patients will go to Doctor 1. Some patients will go to Doctor 2. Some patients will go to Doctor 3. Now what happens here? There are all the patients who are in the beginning. Okay, now here what happens? There will be a queue for doctor number 1. There will be a queue for doctor number 2. So there will be a queue for doctor number 3. I hope you are relating my example with the hospital example. So what happens here? All the people, first we go to the reception. There is no difference here who is going to which doctor. Full, complete patients. They should go to the reception. After that, okay, now I want to go to doctor number 1. You want to go to doctor number 3. Another patient want to go to doctor number 3. We cannot go directly there. We were in a queue here. Directly we cannot go to the doctor. Again, we have to be in a queue. In the same way, all the process, we call it as a job queue, which is like this one. It's a job queue. All the patients in the hospital, they are in a queue first. Then these are the list of patients now ready to go to the doctor inside the clinic. Inside the clinic, there is a clinic, small place for one doctor. So we are again going to sit there for some time. So we are ready now because we have a sticker. We are now waiting to go to the doctor. They are called as a ready queue. So now I call this queue as ready queue. Ready queue. Ready queue. Okay, why? Because now we are inside the clinic. So here, what is inside the clinic? They say they are inside the main memory. They are now ready and waiting to meet the doctor. So waiting to execute that process. Okay, sometimes what happens is, now imagine this device queue. Like we are going for a lab exam. Sorry. Now we are going to lab. For example, X-ray. I'll say X-ray to do the testing. Now what happens here again? There is a queue. We cannot again go directly. We have to say maybe 5 patients or 3 patients, 2 patients waiting. So what is device queue? Set of process waiting for input and output devices. Like the patient is waiting for the X-ray, or maybe they are waiting for the lab, or maybe they are waiting for the pharmacy. Likewise, everywhere we know in the hospital there is a queue. Same thing happens inside the system also. There will be a job queue, there will be a ready queue, there is a device queue. What is device queue? The process waiting for the input and output devices. Okay, now what happens here? What we do in the hospital, like one patient will be going from one queue to another queue, another queue to another queue, like we will be moving. I hope you are relating my example in the hospital. We go to the reception, we have to stand in a queue. From that queue, we go to the doctor's queue. We finish the doctor queue, we have to go to the lab exam, we are again in a queue. Again, the lab exam finished, we have to come back to the doctor queue. Like what we do, we are changing between various queues. Same happens here. We are moving between the process, migrate among various queues between one and another. So depending upon situation, we will be moving. So if you look at, I will just show the picture. If you just see this, now this is the CPU. This is the ready queue. What is ready queue? Now we should understand ready to go to the CPU. Okay, so the process will be waiting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They will go to the CPU. If the job is done, finish, exit. That's it. Completed. But for example, if there is any input and output available for this process. Example, I want to print something, or I want to take some input from here. The process will not exit. The process will come from here. We'll go into the input and output queue. Once we finish the input and output queue, what will happen? It will go back and stand in that. Okay, that is one point. Okay, second point, time slice experience. This point I will explain to you when we go to lecture number 4, when we talk about scheduling. In sometimes what happens is the process, our timetable. For example, our timetable is only 40 minutes. Okay, in the class. If the time is finished, I cannot take the class. I cannot continue the class. I have to come back again next week or maybe in another class. In the same way, in the system, how they have designed the operating system scheduling is, suppose there is a process, okay, and this process take, for example, 1 hour to complete. For 1 hour, it cannot stay in the CPU. What they do, I'm just giving an example. I will give a concrete example when we go to lecture number 4. Okay, suppose this process wants 1 hour, it cannot stay in CPU for 1 hour because they divided the time slice. What do you mean by time slice? Like I have a timetable. What is our timetable? 40 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours is our class. So they divide, for example, into 2 slices, which means 30 minutes, 30 minutes. So what happens? The process, example, process 1 will go to the CPU, and after 30 minutes, because the system is designed, it cannot stay for 1 hour in the system. After a time slice, which means after 30 minutes, the process will come back. What they say, okay, now please wait for some time, I cannot take 1 hour, we have to come back again. So what happens here, because they designed the system in such a way that they want to run more process. If they give more time to one process, what about other process? They have to keep on waiting. So to avoid this, what they do, 1 hour process cannot go into the CPU. They say, okay, only for 30 minutes you can complete. After that, again you have to come back. So once the time slice happen, the CPU takes the process and again put it back onto the queue. So this is what. Third time, there is a point called creating a child process or a parent process. I will tell you about this point in the coming slides. That time also, the process will be removed from the CPU and it will be going onto the queue again. Okay. Sometimes we stop the process in the middle. Now, for example, I am running PowerPoint. Now, what I am doing here is I am not stopping PowerPoint. I change to Google Meeting or some other Google Meeting now. What I did to my process, I stopped the process. Now, where is my process? It is not in the CPU. I'm just giving an example. It is went back to the queue. Now, once I open again, it is coming back. So what is that? This is something called, interrupt. I stop the process in the middle. I start the process again. So sometimes we have to stop and we have to restart the process. That is called as interrupts. Why do interrupts happen? We will discuss about that later. What you need to know today, we have various queues. Okay, the process will be in various queues in different times. Again, once the process come to the CPU, it may complete the job and it will exit from here, or it will go to different queues. Now I want to read the queues. There are now two types of scheduling happens here. Long-term scheduling, short-term scheduling. What is a long-term scheduling? In the scheduling, it decides which job loaded onto the disk should move to the main memory. Now imagine that we have a hard disk. And here we have so many process 1, process 2, process 3, process 4. Now what is this long-term scheduling? It will take the job, I'll say 1, 2, 3. It will take the job from hard disk. Where it will put this job? It will put onto main memory. Now what is this scheduling? What is this scheduling? This is called as long-term scheduling. What is long-term scheduling? Decides which job loaded onto the hard disk should be moved to main memory. Now here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We take a job from the hard disk, we put into the main memory. Job number 1, job number 3, job number 5, then job number 4, different queue depending upon the requirement. Now that is called as a long-term scheduling. Now in the main memory, we have the jobs. Now we have to decide from this 1, 2, 4, 5 or 1, 2, 5, 4, whatever the jobs we have to decide now which job will be allocated to CPU. So this is called as short-term scheduling. So the job from here, which job will go to CPU? So this is called as a short-term scheduling. So we have to decide. So whether job 1 will go to CPU, or job 2 will go to CPU, or job 3 will go to CPU, or job 4 will go to CPU, we have to decide. So which means here we have a scheduler. Why? Because to choose which job from here, from the hard disk, will go to the main memory. Again, we have a scheduler here. Why? Because to choose which job from the main memory will go to the CPU. So there are two types of scheduling. Now, once the job has been selected from the main memory and ready for the scheduling, now this is actually a ready queue. They are ready to go to the CPU. Now we discussed already about the ready queue. So the ready queue, the ready queue, the jobs which are now available to go to the CPU. Okay, hope all the queues are clear. We have lecture number 4 discussing in detail about scheduling. I told you about scheduler, which is going to schedule which job will go to the CPU. How do we select it? How do we select it? Okay, tell me, in the hospital, how do they choose the patient to go to the doctor? Because I want to stop to know your attention. How do they choose the patient and select and send to the doctor?
By calling names.
By calling names, but how do they select the patient? Is there any criteria? How do they choose the patient who is going to the doctor next?
By the sticker's number.
Okay, by the sticker, because whenever we go to the clinic, they give us the sticker and they put the sticker in an order, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for example, okay, I am going to follow this. Just understand my example, because this will give some idea for our lecture number 4. So we follow the sticker. Okay, so we see when we go to the nursing station, she will take a sticker and put onto that. Okay, you are number 1, you are number 2, you are number 3, you are number 4, and she will be calling by name. Okay, 1, go to the doctor, 2, go to the doctor, 3, go to the doctor. Now, can we always follow the same method, or is there any scope change? Understand my question. Do we always follow this method, or is there any scope for the change here? You are understanding my point here? If you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if the nurse says I am going to follow this method, okay, so sometimes imagine one patient comes and very urgent, imagine, very urgent, there is serious problem with the patient. Can the nurse say that please wait in a queue?
No.
No.
So what the nurse will do, the nurse select the patient and say, tell to the other patients, please wait, we have another patient who is very urgent, I want to send this patient to the doctor. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so which means we are always not going to follow this sticker. Sometimes there is a possibility of change. Okay, another example I want to give. I gave you the example of going to the lab. Okay, I am patient number 1. I go to the doctor. The doctor told me to go to the lab examination. Okay, I completed my lab examination. I come back to the nurse again. Then what she will do? She will tell me to wait for all the patients to complete, because my queue is already completed. I already went to the doctor. I am number 1. I finished. Done. Will she tell me to wait for all the patients to complete, or she will send me in the middle?
He will send you to the middle.
In the middle, right? So which means what I want to say, what I want to tell you here is, when we have to follow the scheduling here, there are some methods. Always we cannot follow a single method. Depending upon the situation, like the nurse is selecting different methods. So normally what she follow, she say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, go in a queue. But if there is any situation, like one emergency patient comes, she will send. Or in between, I have completed my job, like I went to the medical test, I completed my job, she will send me to the doctor. In the same way, the operating system also follows scheduling. Okay, so now, as I told you, please keep this point in your mind. When we go to our lecture number 4, we are going to talk about scheduling algorithms. This is very interesting, very important lecture. We will definitely get questions from this lecture, because we have to study some algorithms. Normally, it will select according to the queue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But other than that, there are different ways how do the operating system has to choose the job. Like what we have said here, we just say choose. How do it will choose? Because it has to choose according to some algorithm, because operating system does not have a mind. For that reason, they have created some algorithms. We are going to understand those algorithms in our lecture number 4. Today, what we understood, we understand that there are different queues in the system we need to follow. It cannot be like mix of everything. We need to follow a particular order to go to the CPU. Each process has to follow a particular order to go to the CPU. Who is going to decide this? The operating system is going to decide that. That's why we are studying this point here, to know how do the operating system selects and how do the operating system does scheduling. For that reason, we study about this kind of scheduling. We study about the queue. That's why these two topics about scheduling, process scheduling. So this is the point. The process scheduler, what it does, selects among the available process for the next execution on the CPU. Like I told you, the nurse is selecting a patient and sending to the doctor. In the same way, the process scheduler is a concept of operating system. How it is going to do that, we will study in lecture number 4. Today, just remember about the queues and the different schedulers. What the operating system has to do, how the process has to be created, how the process has to be completed, termination. So that is what is the process. Now, the process creation we need to discuss. The creation means when we open any program, that is actually called as a process. Okay, so for example, I open Microsoft Word. That is one process. And I want to do, for example, checking of the spelling. I want to check my spellings in the system. So what we do normally, I hope you got the experience. Like when we type the Microsoft Word and when we want to check the spelling, we type F7. When we type F7 or check the spelling, it is now going to open a box, and in that box we can check the spellings of our document so that we can change the mistakes in our spellings. What I mean to say here is when we are running the process, okay, so for example, process 1, we normally use process 1, 2, 3 in the system. Process 1. So now I am running process 1. Example, Word, Microsoft Word. Now in this I type something. Now I want to check spelling. What it has to do, okay, I want to check the spelling. Another box will open. So what happens here? Check spelling. Now what's happening here? The main process, which is Microsoft Word process, has created a child process. Understand, I am trying to tell you the process can create a child process. Like, the main program can create a sub program, or we call it as a child program. Okay, hope you understand my example of Microsoft Word. So because if you look at the screen, it is another screen which is going to check for the spelling. Okay, another example, I want to print. I open Microsoft Word, I want to print. So what happens here? Another window will be open, and this is for the printing. What we do here, we choose how many pages, how many copies we want to print, and what is the order of printing. We do so many settings in the printing. Now this is another child process. It is not exact real example, but I am just giving you one example to understand that one parent process can create number of child process. So that's what is mentioned here. Parent process can create child process, which in turn create other process, forming a tree. So normally what happens in the system, one process can create a child process can create another child process, possible. Like imagine the family. Okay, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, same thing happens in the process also. One process, depending upon the situation, depending upon the requirement of the program, one program can create number of child programs. Okay, a child process. The child process can create another child process. Okay, so for each process, there will be a process ID. Like, we have our names. How do we recognize ourselves? With the help of a name. In the same way, process is recognized in the computer with the help of PID. So what is PID? Process identifier. Okay, now imagine, I will take a real life example. Resources. Like, we have take the real life example of a family. So we have house, or we have money. Okay, or we have, for example, car. This is our resources in the home. We have a house, we have car. So in the computer, what are the resources? I will tell you, but just understand the general example. So what are the resource sharing options for the parent and child in the family? Okay, parent and children share all the resources. Imagine you are living with your parents. Okay, we share the house, we share the money, we share our car because it is common. I hope you are understanding my example. So resource sharing options in the family, we can share the house, we can share the money, we can share the car if all the parents and the children living in the same house. That is one option. Parent, children share all the resources. Okay. If the children are married, for example, if they have a big house, what they do, children share a subset of parents resources. Like for example, there is a big house, maybe there are 1 or 2 rooms extra, or maybe outside of the house they can build another house and the children can live there. So that is second option. Children share subset of parent resources, which means they don't share all the money, because the son or the daughter, they are earning, they have a job, so no need to share. So they are having their own money, no need to share here. Maybe they share only the house, they don't share the money. Okay, so this is they don't they have their own car, they don't need to share the car. So this is the middle option. Children share not all, only subset of the parent resources. Maybe they live together in the same house, maybe they live separately in a small room in the same location. Okay. Now, another option, parent and child share no resources. Imagine parents are living in Muscat, children are living in Sur. So, different location. So, they don't share the house, they don't share the money, and they don't share the car. So, in that way, we are not going to share anything. So, they are the three options. Just one moment, please. Sorry for that. So I hope you are following the options here. Like the parent and children, they can share all the resources. Children share the subset of the parent resources. Parent and child share no resources because they live separately. Same thing happens for the parent and child process. So when we have the parent and child process, what are the resources? Resources are memory. Resources are input output devices in the computer. Remember, in the computer, what are the resources we have? We have the memory, we have the input and output devices. So sometimes what happen, parent process, child process share the same memory. Okay, suppose in the system, each process has been given a memory. Remember, I will tell you about this point in lecture number 7 and 8. So each process will be given a memory. Imagine this is for memory given for process 1. When process 1, like I gave you the word example, when process 1 created a child process, it can share the memory from the same process, or it can take a separate memory, which is child of process 1. Likewise, they are the sharing options. Hope you understand that. What you need to know, what are the resources of the computer? The resources can be memory, The resources can be input and output devices. Okay. Now, another thing, execution options. What are the execution options? Parent and children execute concurrently. How do you remember this? The father or the parent and the children, they are working together in the family. Okay, they are earning the money, they are working together at the same time. It happens like parents working, children also working. So parent and children executing concurrently at the same time. Or sometimes what happens, parent waits until the children terminate. So what do they say? Okay, parent give a job to the children. Okay, say you complete the job, then I will start. Now, sometimes if you look at this screen, the word example I gave you. So when I open the spelling check, now what is happening? Parent process is Microsoft Word at the background. It is not doing anything until I complete the spelling. After completing the spelling check, once I click OK or close, then I go back to Microsoft Word main page. Same thing about the printing. Once I click print, this option will be on my screen. I cannot do anything in the background for editing the document or changing something. After completing the child process like printing, after completing the job, then I can come back and work on my system. So same thing in the operating system. Waits until parent waits until children terminate. So until the child process completes, the parent process is going to wait. Now, what you need to remember from this slide, the parent process sometimes create child process, and for each process, either a parent or a child, there is a parent ID, a process ID. We call it as a PID. And how do they share the options and how do they execute? Okay, so when the parent process create a child process, it will look like a tree. So what do you mean by tree? A tree will be having the root and the branches. So it looks like this. Process 1 creating a child process, child process, child process. This child process creating another two child process. This child process creating another child process. So likewise, you can see it's like a tree. We have a main root and we have the branches. So in data structures also you might have studied about the trees. Okay, so this is how it forms like a tree. Main process, you can see PID stands for process ID, will be this is a child, this is a child, this is a child. Now in this child, there are again two subchildren. So in this child, there is another child. Likewise, it is going to create a process tree. Hope the points are clear. Okay, and there are some commands to remember. So the commands here is, if the parent process want to create a child process, remember, these are system calls actually. I told you about the system calls. So what is the system call here is, it uses a fork system call. So what do we mean by fork? Remember, fork is like when we see in the road also, there will be a fork. The main road will be going, we see this sign in the main road. This is called as a fork, which means this is a main road, but here we can go from this side also. What's happening here? One road has become now two roads. That is actually the fork. That is actually the fork. One road has become two roads. Okay, so what is a fork system call? It creates a new process or it creates a child process. Okay, now EXEC is another system call used after the fork to replace the process memory space with the new program. Now what's happening with the help of EXEC? The parent process will be removed and the child process will be kept inside the memory. Look at this. We have a fork system call here. Fork system call, the child process will be created. Now the child process is executing EXEC. What is EXEC? It is going to remove the parent from the memory. What the parent has to do? The parent has to wait. The parent has to wait. The parent process will be removed from the memory. From here, the child process will run. After the child process complete the job, it exit. Exit is another system call. See, in this slide, there are three system calls which are important to remember. One is fork, one is EXEC, the other one is exit. Another system call, we can say it is wait system call. It is waiting for something to happen. So the parent process has created the child process. The child process is EXEC. What happens with EXEC? The parent process will be replaced with the child process inside the memory. Until that time, the parent has to wait. once child process has been completed, the parent process will come back. So this line talks about the child process. This line talks about the parent process. So here it is waiting. Once the child is completed, it is now going to restart from the place again. So that is where I told you we have to use the parent and child process sometimes to do multiple jobs. Okay. So once we complete the job, the process is going to complete. So how do the process will complete? I can close the program. Normally, what happens is, now if I click on close, my PowerPoint will be closed. So that is called as exit system call. The process executes the last statement and then asks the operating system to delete it using the exit system call. Imagine this is a Java program. We completed all the program. Finally, after completing the last line, what happens? It will be exit system call. What it will do? It will tell to the operating system, okay, to delete the job using the exit system call. Now, this process, which is in the memory, will be deleted from the system. This is called as exit system call. Okay. Now, another way is the parent process. Sometimes we forcefully close the child process. It was working. There is a problem in the system. There is some wrong in the child process. The parent process may terminate the execution of a child process using abort system call. What is abort? Abort is like closing in the middle. Closing in the middle. It is not completed, but forcefully I want to close the process. So we say abort. When I say abort, which means we are stopping the operation in the middle. We are stopping the process in the middle. So that is who can do? Only a parent. A parent process can terminate the job of the child process. Please do remember that. Okay, so for example, we have process 1 creating a child process, child 1, and we have process 2 creating child 2. Okay, process 1 cannot terminate process 2 because the general example, process 1 is not a parent of child 2. Process 1 is a parent of only child 1. That's why process 1 can only delete child 1, not child 2. Process 2 can create or delete child 2, not process 1. So that's why we need to remember this. Parent process can terminate the execution of the children process. How? With the help of abort system call. This is a system call. If you say abort, it is not the completion of the program, but in the middle, if you want to stop, we say abort. Okay, it will stop in the system. Okay, sometimes, as we understand, the parent process may wait for the termination of the child process. When I told you the previous example, so if the child use exec system call, it is not work. The parent has to stop working now because the child want to complete the job. During this time, it has to do the wait system call. That is wait system call. So the parent process may wait for the termination of a child process by using wait system call. So here, please memorize or remember about this system call. What is the purpose of the system call? So we have seen fork, we have seen exec, we have seen exit, we have seen abort, we have seen wait. So all these system calls in different lectures, we are going to see some system calls. Please memorize them. From exam point of view also, they are important, and to understand the concept also, they are important because later we try to discuss about the process synchronization. We need to know about all these system calls in lecture number 5. Okay, so I hope you followed the concept. So this is the end of lecture number 2. We'll just take a quick break for 5 minutes, and then I will introduce you some concepts from lecture number 3. Take a break of 5 minutes, then we'll come back.